All right, so it's now just after 7. So I'd like to first of all thank everyone for joining us today. This evening we have a little bit of a plan around how we're going to share our the information. I'll just share my screen and begin by sort of showing you a little bit about what we have planned. We're going to be talking about funding opportunities at the national, regional, and other levels. And we'll be looking at that. We are going to give you opportunities to ask questions as you go along and to do all of that kind of thing. But we don't anticipate being extremely long tonight, but depending on the number of questions, we'll be here to answer them as we need to. So our agenda this evening, et je peux dire aussi pour tous ceux et celles qui préfèrent parler en français, si vous avez des questions en français à n'importe quel moment, n'hésitez pas à les poser en français. Puis si c'est à quelqu'un qui ne parle pas le français, je ferai mon possible de faire un sommaire de ce qu'ils ont dit pour permettre à ce que tout le monde comprenne ce qui se passe. So our agenda this evening is we're going to start at the national level, and Erik Lo Forte, who's with us from the United Church of Canada Foundation, will be making a presentation. We'll then ask questions of Erik so that we can then let him go on to whatever else he had planned this evening. And then we'll continue with regional council funding. We'll talk a little bit about how requests are made, and then we'll talk a little bit about what funding exists outside of United Church circles, and some general principles about what to consider when you're applying to any of those levels. And then, of course, additional questions, should there be any. That sound like a good plan for the evening? All right. Alors, je passerai la parole maintenant à Éric Lo Forte. Éric est la personne qui est vraiment le point principal pour la Fondation de l'Église unie du Canada. Si vous avez une idée de quelque chose que vous aimeriez financer, Éric est un peu la première personne à laquelle on peut parler. So Éric Lo Forte is with the United Church of Canada Foundation. He's kind of your go-to person if you've got questions about where do I get funding from the National Church. He's like kind of an air traffic controller for the United Church's Foundation. So I'll turn it over to Erik. I'll stop sharing my screen so that Erik can share his. And thank you again for being with us tonight.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. It's good to be known as the person to know where to get money from, opposed to other things. So I'm going to, I assume you can see the screen and it's in presentation mode. So I'll begin. So my name is Erik Lo Forte. I'm the lead at the United Church of Canada Foundation, and I've been with the foundation for close to 10 years now. And where part of my primary role is managing and running our granting programs. I only have 5 to 10 minutes today, and I can talk about grants for probably an hour, and some of you might have heard me talk about it for about an hour. So I'm going to just kind of give a surface level of kind of what is available at the foundation and general counsel office. And I strongly encourage you to reach out to myself or my colleagues at the foundation. If you have any questions or want to run ideas about past us, we're more than welcome to talk to you and kind of find where best use fit and where you have the best opportunity to secure funding. So first, I'll start with just a little bit about who the foundation is. We were established in 2002 by the executive of the General Council, and we were really created to be an arm's length separate organization that is the expert in managing the long-term assets of the United Church of Canada. So currently we have almost about $100 million in assets held in over 500 endowment and other long-term funds. Annually, we grant just over $6.5 million to all levels of the United Church, and that includes individuals and organizations. Similar to the United Church of Canada in 2021, 2022, we underwent our strategic plan, where we found and named our 4 priorities of projects being driven towards anti-racism, climate justice, reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and communities of faith. But we'll move on to grants. So I'm going to spend this time today to really highlight kind of these three opportunities of grants. The first is a Seeds of Hope granting program run by the Foundation. The second is kind of all the scholarship and academic awards at the Foundation. And then the last piece is with the other opportunities. And this is really the smorgasbord of what is out there at the GCO and the Foundation level. And I'll highlight a couple of the bigger ones that we hear more frequently come up. So first is Seeds of Hope. What is the Seeds of Hope? This is really the Foundation's flagship granting program that is looking to support programs and projects that benefit the United Church of Canada. We're looking to support, this is at the organizational level, so this isn't typically where individuals might apply, but we're organizations. So that is support for programs and projects that are run by United Church congregations, communities of faith, United Church organizations, and other ministries, and our partners nationwide. The big key for Seeds of Hope is we are really looking to support programs that are innovative and encourage new expressions of ministry and that are new. I'm going to use new in quotes because what's new for one may not be new for the other, and we completely recognize that. And so really we're just saying, what is new to you? What is innovative to you? How can we help support that? In addition to that, we are looking for projects. The hope is that the projects that we are providing with grants and that we are investing in with our donors' money is projects that can continue to have an impact past the grant. So this doesn't mean that the projects have to go on for eternity, but it does mean that there should be some sort of impact. So for example, if you are approaching us to support an event, we hope that you can show that the event will have the impact of the people that are taking part in it. Will they walk away and be able to share something with their community? Will they internally feel better about themselves or learn something? What is that impact past the financial investment in it? To say what Seeds of Hope is looking for, I think it's also important to say what it is not looking for. Typically, it does not fund capital projects. Basic salaries, things like ministry personnel salaries, it doesn't really look to, it's not built to support that, or what would be considered general operation budgetary stuff. So that's paying bills, or what I would say is typical church things. Of course, there are always exceptions to the rules, and I always welcome people to talk to us about if there are, maybe you have a capital project that you think is a little bit different than just building a ramp. We want to hear that, but I still think it's important to say what it does not fund. Something that sets Seeds of Hope apart for a lot of programs is that it is an application that is based entirely on a digital platform. Of course, if someone has difficulty accessing the internet or using digital, we can provide it in many other forms, but predominantly we hope that people use the online portal. This means that you can come and go, you create a username and password, you can fill it out in your own time and save. You don't need to fill it all out at once. You can also choose to cycle through the questions in order or in whichever way you want. Another benefit of it being online is that if you are looking for support, you can message myself or my colleagues in real time and we can go through the application together. So for example, you might say, hey, question 32, I'm really not sure what the application is asking me. And I can pull up your application and together I can see what you're doing and we can work on it together. So we find that really helpful in grant support. Something to note with Seeds of Hope, unlike other granting programs of the Foundation or GCO, is that it is a matching program. The Seeds of Hope will only grant up to 50% of the overall cost of a program. That doesn't mean that the applicant must know where the other funds are coming from. They should have a good sense and be able to show where that other 50% is come, but it doesn't have to be secured yet. The concept is that if this project is important, that you will also be able to support it internally from either your ops budget or your community's buying in, as well as the Foundation. I'm going to say this a lot, but we always encourage anybody that's looking at Seeds of Hope or any granting opportunities, talk to us. We want to hear from you. We want to answer your questions about it. When is Seeds of Hope? There's 2 rounds a year, one in the spring and one in the fall, and the deadlines are April 15th and October 15th. importantly, again, is the decisions. Even though the applications are due April 15th and October 15th, we take about a month and a half to collect all the applications, submit them to our rightful committees on the board to make decisions. So anyone applying to any of our granting rounds, they can always expect to hear from us during these time periods. So that is the Seeds of Hope program. That is the program that is really based to help projects at the organizational level. But what is there for the individual out there? And so we have a robust scholarship and academic award program. This is a program that is really helping, is built to help our current leaders, but also our future leaders, understanding that we have to put seeds there as well if we're going to grow and continue down the strategic path that we want to. So we have a variety of academic award opportunities that are available to ministers, ministry students, and lay people. So for example, we have research grants available. So this can go where maybe there's a large topic that you think the United Church should know more about or can help guide us in our future, and we'll provide financial support so you can take time to do that correct research. We have postgraduate study support. So we have a lot of future leaders who are going for THDs and PhDs or their DMins or their MDivs, and we have financial support for them. But we also have more general support for our current and future leaders, where maybe it's just you need to take a basic course on grief counseling, or maybe you need to take some sort of CPR training or some sort of leave to learn more about how you can better your call in your community. We also have support for that. So that is the individual level. Unlike Seeds of Hope, this is offered once a year in the spring. Typically, applications are due March 15th, but deadlines do vary. And again, talk to us, check our website out, and you'll know exactly what is due when. Like Seeds of Hope, the decisions are made in late May and early June. So those are the two big foundation pieces. Now, this is kind of the smorgasbord part I was talking about earlier, foundation and general counsel opportunities. All of these 6 topics you could apply for in Seeds of Hope, for example, but there's also other opportunities available. So for environmental grants, you could ask Seeds of Hope saying, hey, I have this really great environmental project that I need support in, and you can apply to Seeds of Hope. And maybe you would also apply for Faithful Footprints, for example. Faithful Footprints is a great granting program of the United Church of Canada that helps communities of faith nationwide support in building projects that are looking at energy efficiency and reducing their carbon cost. Another great example is the capital assistance programs, the grants and loans of the United Church of Canada. That is a program that is built for assistance in capital expenditures. So if one's roof was leaking and needed repair, boiler is out, maybe you're having accessibility issues and need a construction of a ramp or an elevator, that's where you'd go look for capital assistance grants. The next big one, and certainly coming out of COVID, is technical support. How can I do technology better? How can I improve that? I need money for that. General Counsel Office does have technology support grants. Oddly enough, we do get requests to help support pay for things like Rogers and Bell bills. That's not what the project's for. This technology support grants are really to help support like upgrading AV equipment, for example. We know live streaming is becoming and is continued to be very popular since COVID. Maybe you need support in there. But again, you can apply to Seeds of Hope for all this and all these other pieces. At the end of this, I'll put into the chat a bunch of helpful links, I think, that you might want. So that's to Faithful Footprints, to the capital assistance loans, the foundations. That will help there. I also want to say, you can apply to all of these, none of these, and multiple combinations of them. I always encourage everyone to kind of cast that net as wide as possible, and where the ability is there. Submit multiple Seeds of Hope grants, submit multiple rounds. The more things you have out there, the better odds you have of getting a grant. Unfortunately, nothing is guaranteed in grants. As much as I'd love to sit here and be able to just blanket give away a lot of money, that is just not the case. And so the more you put out there, yes, it's a lot of time and work, but the better odds are, frankly. And so none of the GCO or foundation grants that I reviewed or that are offered have limitations where if you apply to one, you cannot apply to the other. So I'd like to leave you with that. I know I kind of quickly ran through everything. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll stop sharing so I can see people in the chat. But,
All right. Thank you very much, Eric. Great, great quick coverage of all of the stuff that's available at the General Counsel Office. That's great. Are there any questions? Avez-vous des questions pour Éric? Okay. It was obviously so thorough that wasn't even necessary. Oh, Aaron.
Yes, hi everybody who doesn't know me. My name is Éric Lo Forte. I'm the Hungarian United Church minister in Montreal, and I have it's not necessarily a question, but more of I would like to ask Eric to send those links via email and not put it in the chat, because if we close Zoom, then we cannot go back to the chat. So it would be awesome if we would have all those links that he talked about on email. Thank you very much.
We can
Absolutely.
we can make sure that the chat gets recorded as well, Eric, so that way we can send that out to all the participants as well as those who may be watching this after the by the recording, right? So we can capture it that way. But yes, absolutely.
Yep. I'll happily send the links to Eric and Brian to circulate, as well as my slide deck, if that's helpful. But oh, sorry, if there was another question.
And I just want to sort of add to that que le site web de la Fondation est disponible entièrement en français aussi. Alors, les gens peuvent naviguer tout le site au complet en français et en anglais et faire la demande aussi en français si vous voulez pour n'importe quel sujet. Jan.
In order to not take up a lot of your time, my main concern for our emerging waters is very much in the capital expenditures end of things.
Yeah.
Before we can even start to think about doing innovation and all of the other wonderful things, we kind of have to have our physical plant in a state that it can be taken care of. So would it be suggested that a group of us from Emerging Waters who are working on this presently, could we ask to meet with you to see where we might be what would be the best places for us to go? I'm listening to all of these wonderful things and thinking, but the underlying problem for us is getting our physical plant operational. So would you suggest that be the way that we go, that we set up some kind of a meeting where you could virtually come meet with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I myself or my colleague Jenna Yango Leonard, we're happy to meet with anyone whenever and however is best for you, whether that's individual or in a group. Again, we're just happy to meet and have conversations, and always, if you have specific requests and ideas, we're happy to talk about them and be as honest and straightforward as we possibly can with it. Again, our goal is to put you and the United Church and everyone there at the best possible chances of receiving financial support and continuing on with what their mission might be. And so, yeah, whatever works for you, we're happy to kind of make it work for us.
Super, thank you.
Okay. And Catherine has put a question in the chat around where would someone who's relatively new to grants get some ideas? There's some sort of brainstorming session that one can go to or access a list of past grants that have worked for other churches.
Yeah,
so
that's important. You know, we can talk about where to go, but you know, if you're new like I am, it's kind of wide, and it would be great to be able to speak to some other churches that have had some great success with receiving grants and requesting grants.
So each round, each spring and fall, we
Mhm.
circulate in our newsletter, put on our website and on our social medias, all the grants that we have awarded any given round. And so there includes,
Okay.
and I put the most recent round, fall round into the chat.
Mhm.
But there we list how much was awarded to who, so which organization, and a brief summary of what they were awarded for. And I absolutely also encourage, on top of talking to us, reach out to those groups. If there's something that you think, hey, that's a great idea, learn from them. We are a community nationwide. I think
Mhm.
sometimes we fall a little bit too local and
Mm.
we're too unique. We aren't as unique as we think. There's other great United Church groups doing something similar potentially that I just want to also share that story. So
Mhm.
absolutely reach out to them. And if you have difficulty with that, I'm happy to help broker that meeting and to make those introductions. I think as a denomination, we're only going to be stronger when we kind of
Yeah.
unite in those fronts, and especially on ideas that are working, and the ideas that don't work, let's also learn from those. So
Thank you, Eric.
And another question from Diane Stevenson Quentin in Mount Bruno around who's able to request the grants? Does it come from the church council? Does it come from some other body? How does it work?
whoever. So anyone can apply. There's typically one applicant named, and that would be just whomever's email is tied to the application and whoever's filling it out. However, there is some signing authorities. The signing authorities can be anybody of a leadership position in your, let's say, congregation. It could be a council. But basically anyone that you would feel comfortable taking fiduciary responsibility and signing off on something. So typically that's board members, treasurers, ministers, people like that.
Just to make
People
sure
from
that
church council.
that you're not asking for money without the church itself knowing anything about it.
Exactly. And we also typically it's best that if you are the applicant, you have someone else be the signing authority again. So we know that this financial ask isn't just in a vacuum of something. So yeah, great question.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Eric. We'll let you go and turn it over to our regional council. Oh, Cynthia, did you have?
I did. I was just looking through the website and I didn't see where the grants for technology were on there. Am I just not seeing them and they're there? Because I can look later. I don't want to waste time.
It's on the United Church of Canada's website. I'll
Okay.
put it in. I'll put it in the chat as we move forward before I leave.
Thank you very much.
All right. So now we'll turn it over to Barbara, who's going to speak to us a little bit about what the regional council has in its universe of funding. And so Barbara, over to you.
Okay. Well, I mean, one of the first things I have to say is that in this regional council, I think we're quite blessed with some of the resources we have. You know, we have a considerable amount of money set aside, and we use it year by year to support all kinds of different things. I think at the moment, many of the grants are once again about new initiatives, you know, trying things out. There isn't anything in the stuff I do, which is about capital grants, some of those kinds of things. I am the chair of the Granting and Enabling Committee, or leadership team, and we deal with mission support, which does do some long-term funding. The rest of them are time limited for the most part, I think, and you are not for long-term continuous funding, okay? And they are intended to get something started and then you sustain it yourself. And I guess is Eric still here? One of the things we have found sometimes is that people apply for Seeds of Hope and then they come back to us for continuing funding. And our pocket isn't getting any bigger. I don't imagine the United Churches is all that much either. So often they find we cannot fund them at the same kind of level that they've been used to. So I think it's something to consider as you apply, how you maintain it, okay? So the funds we have are the Balloon Fund, the Erskine and American Mountainside Fund. We list the Kelly Fund, but it's actually through the Montreal West. We have no control over that one. The Good Samaritan Fund, which is for seniors. Light a Spark. Saint Therese, which I think is pretty much diminished at the moment. And Trois Rivières, which is for things at the far east of the regional council and for French ministries and things like that. So those are the funds that we administer. There is a new one for the Rosemary Lambie Fund for Learning, concerned with working with Indigenous communities, and that's reviewed by the Living in Right Relations people, as well as granting and enabling. And I see on the website, the strategic fund is not yet up.
Not yet.
Some people may remember, if you went to the regional council meeting in November, or that we approved the terms of reference for the strategic fund. If a church closes and property is sold, a certain amount, 10% of the money that is gained then goes to the strategic fund so that we can seed new ministries. Even though some ministries are coming to an end, new ministries can be started. And so that's the intention of that.
And just to clarify, Barbara, we actually did not approve those at the regional council meeting
did we
because
not?
we didn't have them yet. So they were approved by
Okay.
the executive just
Okay.
just last month. So yeah.
Okay. Yes. So perhaps in March they will be brought to the regional council.
That's right.
And so they will see them, and then it will appear on the website. You can find the funds and the way they can be used on the Nakonha regional website. There's also a common form for virtually every fund there. You can apply for it. If you use the common fund form, then if we say, oh, well, this isn't really Balloon, but it could be Erskine and American, we flip it over. Okay? Or you apply for Good Samaritans, we say, well, this isn't really seniors, but this is something else. We can do those changes. We can try and find the money where we have it somewhere. And we have 3 application deadlines: February 15th, May 15th, and October 15th. I would say for everything other than mission support, February 15th is probably an important deadline. I think Erskine and American tries to give as much of their money away for the year in February. So if you want money from them, that, try and apply early. The only time you can apply for mission support, which is the long-term continuous funding, is in October. So all those details are on the website. And I am available to try and help walk people through things. I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth. Are there questions about what I've said so far? As I say, we are very fortunate and very blessed that the Finance and Extension Board provides money for our mission support grants, and that we have these other funds which can support things that we want to try out. So if we want to try and bring some pastoral charges or congregations together and see what we can do together, if we want to try and offer a seniors ministry or a youth ministry, there are funds available for that. And I think that's something important to consider. And as Eric said, it takes a time after the application time for us to be able to look at the applications and recommend it to the executive or to the regional council. So it takes a month, 6 weeks, something like that, to get an answer back. So I guess that's what I had to say.
Great.
Oh, Lil is saying the grants are only in February.
For Scandinavian American, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think we'd been doing that in the past, but I think the trustees are tightening up a little on some of the practice. So.
All right. No questions for Barbara? Oh, you got off easy, Barbara.
Yeah, I did. I was too confusing.
Brian, would you like to tell us a little bit about how it all works?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the application process, exactly how it works. So, as Barbara mentioned, there's 3 application deadlines during the year. The first is coming up soon, February 15th. Then there's May 15th. And just a slight correction, the third one is September 15th. And for each of these, there is a standardized grant application form that you fill out, which is available on the Regional Council website. So, yeah, what is the, some people ask me sometimes, what is the deadline? Is it 5 p.m. on February 15th? Well, if you're sending it by email, then your deadline is 11:59 p.m. So you can go right to the limit if you want to. So
I think we do consider them afterwards, but if we have a meeting planned fairly quickly, then you might miss it. That's the problem, right?
yeah, we're not 100% strict on that deadline. So if the committee hasn't met yet and we have time to get the application to them, then we will still consider it. But you don't want to spread that too widely and encourage late applications, but it is a possibility.
Your application may be considered a couple of days late, but it may also not be.
That's it. Okay, so the one exception for this is for the Kelly Fund, which it's its own animal. It's administered by 3 trustees who make the decisions on the grant applications, and these grants don't have to be approved by the Regional Council. So if you're applying for the Kelly Fund, you can apply anytime throughout the year. So there are no deadlines, so applications are accepted at any time. So what happens after, yeah, so if you're submitting an application, what you should do is submit it to me by email. You can also use Canada Post as you want, but if you want, but I don't need a hard copy. So most people are just submitting it by email these days. So what happens after the applications are received is I will distribute them to the members of the committee, and then we'll have a meeting, usually 2 or 3 weeks after the deadline, and then applications will be considered, and then decisions will be made in terms of the grants that are being awarded. And so then those recommendations go to the Regional Council Executive for approval. And once we have that approval, then I can issue the checks and send them out to the grant recipients. Now, in terms of what is the amount available for grants from each fund, we have numerous restricted funds that are that are held through the Finance and Extension Board. So what we use as a general rule is we would take the value of the fund at the year end. So we would take for 2024, we would take the value of a fund on December 31st, 2023. We would take 5% of that value, and that would be our guideline in terms of how much we could grant in the following year. It is a guideline. It's not strictly followed, but that's a general rule. So one tip I can give you is your chances of getting a grant are greater the earlier you apply in the year. Okay, because a lot of grants are given out after the February 15th deadline. So if you wait until the September 15th deadline, there may not be much money left in the fund to be granted, or in fact, there may be no money left. So your best tip is to get them in early. Also, specifically with the Erskine and American Fund, is that their terms of reference indicate that they want to give out grants only through the February 15th cycle, unless it's an unusual situation of urgent need or emergency. Okay, so that's basically it in terms of the grants from the restricted funds. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the mission support grants. So there's one deadline during the year, which is September 15th. Now for that, you have to use the United Church of Canada mission support application, and that is also available on our regional council website. I always get questions about this because on that application, it says the deadline is August 31st, but our actual deadline of our regional council is September 15th. Okay, so if you're applying for mission support, September 15th deadline. So what happens after the deadline is I distribute the applications to the members of the committee. There's a mission support committee, which is a subgroup of the granting and enabling leadership team. And then what we do is we arrange a day or 2 days where each of the applicants is interviewed, a short interview, 10 or 15 minutes. And then after that, the committee members decide in terms of grants, mission support grants that will be awarded. Now, again, these once they've made those recommendations, and again, it goes to the regional council executive for approval. Generally, that approval would come in November, and then that would be mission support for the next year. So whatever amount the applicant is granted as mission support, and then it would be paid out during the course of the next year over 4 quarterly installments. So you would get 1 quarter in January, April, July, and October. So where do the funds come from for mission support? Well, they come from a grant to the regional council from the Finance and Extension Board. So when the Finance and Extension Board does its budget for the coming year, they determine how much will be available for mission support. So last year it was $505,000. It's going to be the same for this year. So this is where the difficulty comes in, is that we have a fixed amount of money that's available for mission support. There are numerous applications, very worthwhile applications. But for example, last year we had $505,000 available, and we had requests for grants of between $700,000 and $800,000. Okay, so this is where the hard work of the committee comes in, is they have to decide, we've got this fixed amount of money to allocate, and how do we allocate it? So those are the 2 main sources of grants from the regional council. I see Jan has a question.
Is it appropriate for me to ask it at this moment, or do you want to finish?
I'm pretty well finished, so yeah, go ahead.
Well, my question is, can you give me an example of what mission support would support?
Well, the big ones that we support, the 2 big ones are the community ministries, the Montreal City Mission and the St. Columba House. So, it has to be a charitable organization. We do support, we support COCLA, which is, providing food to low-income people in the Saint Laurent area. And there's a list of 10 or 12 that we support, but
Beaconsfield Initiative around LGBT and around the newcomers program both come out of there.
Mhm.
yeah, new one we started was St. Martha's Chapel this year.
The chaplaincies, some of those
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Bishop's chaplaincy, Concordia chaplaincy.
Sometimes they're more, they're not a very large amount, but it shows our continuing support for organizations. We do support, we have in the past supported congregational ministries, but I think it's hard to, it can be difficult to, if all the congregations applied for money that they needed, we certainly couldn't fund all of them. But we have in the past done some of that as well. But I think we put a priority on more community ministries and long-term programs.
And in this past year, we had $850,000 requested.
800,000 is what comes to mind.
800,000
So,
and only 500,000 to spend. So yeah.
we have to set some priorities, and but we will consider requests from congregations as well as other community ministries.
Any other questions for Barbara? Or for Brian in terms of process? All right.
I forgot to say earlier, please do answer the questions, but don't send us books. Because, if you're reading 20 applications, you don't need 20 volumes of information. You just need enough to make the decision you're making.
All right. Well, let me move into funds that are not United Church funds. I know, right? It's possible. And I know that for a lot of folks, the anxiety has always been around the fact that the United Church obviously is in a situation where, we're in a lot of places where especially in Quebec, where a lot of the funds from other places aren't keen to finance religious organizations or for religious purposes. But there is a great number of us who have projects that meet social need beyond the religious needs and the religious aspects of the church. And so I want to just sort of highlight for you how important it is to sort of look at various foundations that exist. And so you can always start with your community foundations. If you look up any given city, even some small cities, a lot of them have a citywide community foundation. And within that foundation, what they do is they gather together a whole bunch of different family and corporate foundations from that region and list them. And if you go and do a search on these websites, there are often funds that will be interested in funding projects that churches do that may not be uniquely religious in nature. And so it's really important to do a quick search for community foundations and to look within those websites, because you'll find things you hadn't thought was possible. And they really have a large diversity of funds. I think if you go to the Montreal Community Foundation website, you'll see there's like 500 different funds that all have different criteria, that are all invested in different ways, but that may meet a specific project that you're thinking about or that you're wanting to get funded. So community foundations are a source that we don't often think about in the church, but is certainly one that we might want to think about going forward. The other thing I wanted to sort of highlight is private foundations and corporations are sometimes really hard to find. However, there is a database that is searchable for private funders that the United Church of Canada has access to. So if you have a project and you're not sure where to find funding, you can speak to our brand new growth animator, Tori Mullen. Tori is a new staff person serving the 3 regional councils of East Central Ontario, Eastern Ontario, Outaouais, and Nakonha. And Tori can do a search to find different types of private funders that may be interested in funding the kind of project you have in mind. So you can always reach out and see. There are, I'm not kidding you, 30,000 funds available in that database. So not all of them are obviously going to be applicable to the work that you're necessarily wanting to do, but it's worth looking at because there's quite a bit there to do. The other thing I like to suggest is that there may be corporate partners that we haven't really thought about that may have an interest in a project that the one that you're thinking about. There are generally two reasons why a corporation might be interested in funding a charitable organization on a particular project. And it's usually because the work that you're doing is completely aligned with their mission. Or it's because being aligned with that particular project will help mediate their reputation on something else that they may not be so keen about. Let me give you an example in the environmental sector, which is one that I know quite well. Royal Bank has become a really massive funder of ocean protection and ocean cleanup projects. They do that because it's aligned with a number of their corporate priorities in terms of their reputation. Likewise, the Forest Products Association of Canada likes to give money to conservation organizations to help mediate their reputation when it comes to environmental issues. And so you can see that it depends on the kind of corporation, and depending on the project that you have in mind, there are different ways of looking at that and pursuing those options. When you're preparing a grant application, and this goes for anyone, whether it's a community foundation or whether it's a church fund, a number of things I would suggest when you're thinking about these applications. The first is focus on the outcomes. Very few people are willing to fund something just because it sounds good to you. Show numbers. Numbers are really important. Show the budget in detail about where you're getting money, how it's coming through to you. Talk about how many people's lives will be touched by the project that you're undergoing. What are the measurable outcomes so that at the end of the year, when you have to file a report, that you can show that you actually did what you said you would do. And be reasonable in the impact you think you will have. Don't say, oh, and by the end of this, there will be 5,000 people coming to this project, because if you can't meet that objective, then that's not a very good thing to show at the end of the day either. But also show that there's a domino effect. Barbara was saying earlier that it's always good for us to be able to see that the project that you've engaged in has a reach beyond even the dollars and cents that you spent on it in the short term. So what is the domino effect that you can have? And how is it innovative and not necessarily just business as usual? More often than not, if a church comes to us and says, so we have a deficit, we just need you to cover the deficit. Well, you know, there are churches all over the country in deficits. What is it that is happening that is going to mean that business won't be held as usual? What is it that's going to change the dynamic or the trajectory? Talk a bit about that. That's really important. I always talk about man bites dog stories as being really helpful as part of the storytelling of what you're doing. What makes the project interesting and unusual for a church? What is it surprising people about? Show creativity around that. That always attracts attention. And the thing that is really helpful is if you attract media attention, that you can use the media coverage as part of your pitch on why this particular project is worth doing. And sometimes I talk about smoke and mirrors because I think that there are ways to demonstrate impact that really amplify what's going on in a way that that can be more powerful. The other thing that's very helpful is matching donations. So if you're asking for money, is there a way to demonstrate that you can find another source that will match those donations? Foundations of all sorts really love to see that you're active in helping to match or driving other fundraising initiatives as part of the gift that they may give you. That makes a big difference in a lot of these cases. So that's a strong recommendation I would make. All of you have seen the charities that send you emails that say, we have a $5,000 donation that this person's going to make if we can raise $5,000 from our donors. It's that kind of thing, right? It's donations that create donations. Keep your application simple. I would suggest that you not use church lingo, because often church lingo is used to obfuscate things and not necessarily to make them clearer. So use clear language. And as Barbara said, don't overwrite your application. It just can't be read, right? No matter who you're applying to, they're getting a lot of applications. Keep it simple, keep it to the point, make your point succinctly, and know in one sentence what it is that you're saying that your project is going to achieve. If you can say it in one sentence, then the rest of it is really about the numbers and the impact and all those other things. But you can stay specific in saying at the very top of your application, what is this going to do? Because often the donors who are giving to this particular project want to know how they can brag about having supported your project. So it's partly also about how the donor benefits from that donation. So those are just some things to consider as you're making applications. So obviously funding is challenging. You want to keep your efforts focused on where you have the best probability of success. Otherwise, you'll probably spend too much time and energy on things that really won't be a good return on your investment. And in fact, the time you spend writing these applications and thinking through your project really clearly with some, and communicate it as clearly as possible, the better that time is invested. So think about that and how we're trying to reshape the world in God's image. That's a key piece of how we're going to be able to fund a lot of the great work that so many of our ministries and so many of our community ministries are doing. So just some key thoughts around that. Any questions on the basis of what I've just shared, or any other thoughts that folks would like to share from their own experience? All right. So all of this material will be shared with you, and we'll make sure that folks get this. And also for those folks who couldn't be here tonight, but will be watching this in recording, we'll make sure that there's a little package available for you as well. And so thank you all for being here. And you'll get a short survey shortly after this, just to make sure that we offered you what you thought you were looking for, to make sure that we answered your questions and see if there's anything else that we need to be offering you to help you shape your success and your ministry in the future. All right. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have
you
a
very
good
much.
evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.